It's October, the air is crisp, the leaves are turning, and I'm on my roof wrestling with a giant inflatable spider. Because Halloween, people. It's the one time of the year you can get away with turning your house into a low-budget horror movie set, and I embrace it. I mean, who doesn't love Halloween? Candy, costumes, scaring the crap out of little kids. It's a freaking national treasure. And then she showed up. I'm James, by the way, James Donovan. And I love Halloween, always have. It's the one holiday where you can be as over-the-top, as ridiculous, as spooky as you want, and nobody bats an eye. Well, almost nobody. See, I live in Whispering Pines Estates. Sounds charming, right? Like a place where you'd find little woodland creatures and babbling brooks. Nope. It's an HOA. And not just any HOA. It's the kind of HOA that sends you passive-aggressive notes about the color of your mulch. Now my Halloween decorations? They're enthusiastic. Let's go with that. I'm not talking about a couple of plastic pumpkins and a sad little ghost hanging from a tree. I go all out. We're talking giant inflatable spiders, like the one I was currently battling, tombstones with punny epitaphs, strobe lights, fog machines, animatronic zombies that pop out of the bushes, the whole 9 yards. Think Clark Griswold, but with a slightly darker twist. I mean, it's Halloween, right? You gotta commit. But this year I had a problem. A Karen problem. She appeared at the edge of my lawn, like a beige wraith materializing out of the perfectly manicured shrubbery. Karen. The name alone conjures up images of tightly pursed lips, disapproving frowns, and an endless supply of HOA violation notices. She was always impeccably dressed, even when she was out power walking in her matching tracksuit and sensible shoes. She carried a clipboard like it was a weapon, and her expression, well, let's just say she didn't look like she was a big fan of Halloween, or fun in general. "Mr. Donovan," she said, her voice as sharp and cold as a November wind, "we need to talk about your decorations." "Karen," I said, trying, and failing, to keep the exasperation out of my voice. "What seems to be the problem? Not enough cobwebs? Too few tombstones? Should I add another zombie or two?" "It's excessive, Mr. Donovan," she said, her eyes scanning my yard with a look of pure, unadulterated horror. "It's garish. It's tasteless." "Tasteless?" I repeated, incredulous. "It's Halloween, Karen. It's supposed to be a little over the top. It's supposed to be fun." "Fun?" she scoffed. "This isn't fun, Mr. Donovan. This is a nuisance. It's disrupting the peace. It's scaring the children." "Scaring the children?" I said, gesturing towards a group of kids who were staring at my decorations with wide-eyed wonder. "They love it, Karen. They think it's awesome." "It's lowering property values, Mr. Donovan," she insisted. "It's attracting undesirable elements. It's a blatant disregard for community standards." She held up a paper, stating I was in violation. Apparently, the spider was too big, its legs extending over the property line by a whole 6 inches. And, because Karen apparently has nothing better to do with her time, she'd gone and measured, I assume. She then had the audacity to demand I take it all down. All of it. The spider, the tombstones, the zombies, the lights, everything. "This isn't a haunted house, Mr. Donovan," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is a residential neighborhood. We have standards." "Standards?" I repeated, my voice rising in pitch. "You mean beige houses and perfectly manicured lawns? Where's the fun in that, Karen? Where's the spirit of Halloween?" "The spirit of Halloween," Karen said with a shudder, "is not welcome in Whispering Pines Estates. You have until the end of the week, Mr. Donovan, to tone it down, to make it more tasteful." "Tasteful? For Halloween?" This woman, she was like the Grinch, only instead of stealing Christmas, she was stealing Halloween. And I, James Donovan, was not going to let that happen. So I'm standing there, looking at this woman, right? Dressed like she's about to attend a funeral for a pumpkin spice latte, and she's telling me my Halloween decorations are too much? You gotta be kidding me. It's like she's allergic to fun. Like she sees a giant inflatable spider and her first thought is, oh no, that's lowering property values. Lady, it's Halloween. It's supposed to be spooky. It's supposed to be a little over the top. It's the one time of year you can get away with this kind of crap. I told her I got approval for all of it, last year. But she's saying there were complaints. She wouldn't show them to me, and then she delivered the ultimatum. Tone it down, Mr. Donovan, she said, her voice like nails on a chalkboard, or the HOA will be forced to take action. Take action? What were they gonna do? Send in the Ghostbusters, confiscate my candy corn, fine me for excessive spookiness? I was furious. I was livid. I was also kind of amused. Because this whole thing was so freaking ridiculous, and I knew right then and there that I wasn't gonna back down. I wasn't gonna tone it down. I was gonna do the opposite. I was gonna show Karen and the whole freaking HOA what real Halloween spirit looked like. They wanted a war? Oh, they were gonna get a war. A Halloween war. And I, James Donovan, was gonna be freaking General Patton of pumpkins and spiders. And, well, you get the idea. It was on. Tone it down. That's what Karen wanted. A toned-down Halloween. A tasteful Halloween. Like that's even a thing. It's like asking a freaking lion to be a vegetarian. It just ain't natural. I, James Donovan, was not about to tone down anything. Especially not my Halloween decorations. It was a matter of principle, man. A matter of pride. And, yeah, okay, maybe a little bit of a matter of wanting to see Karen's head explode. I stood there, in my yard, surrounded by my inflatable spiders and my animatronic zombies, and I looked at that stupid freaking violation notice. Tone it down, it said. Make it more tasteful. Tasteful, I muttered to myself. Tasteful, my ass. And that's when it hit me. A lightning bolt of pure, unadulterated, Halloween-fueled genius. If they didn't like my Halloween decorations, well then I just wouldn't have Halloween decorations. I'd have something else, something bigger, something bolder, something completely and utterly freaking insane. They want tasteful, huh? I said to Norman, my trusty garden gnome, who, by the way, was now wearing a miniature witch hat. I'll give 'em freaking tasteful. I'll give 'em something they'll never forget. My internal monologue was a whirlwind of ideas, each one more ridiculous than the last. I considered turning my yard into a giant pumpkin patch, or maybe a zombie petting zoo. Okay, maybe that was a bit much, but then I remembered something. Something I'd seen online, something that had stuck in my brain like a freaking alien parasite. I started researching, not HOA rules this time. Oh no. I was researching UFOs, alien crash sites, government conspiracies, the whole freaking X-Files enchilada. And the more I researched, the more I realized this was it. This was my answer. This was my way to stick it to Karen and her beige-loving HOA, once and for all. Because see, here's the thing. I went through those freaking HOA bylaws, cover to cover. I read every single rule, every single regulation, every single mind-numbingly boring paragraph. And you know what? There were rules about Halloween decorations. Specific rules. About size, about placement, about tastefulness. Ugh. But there was nothing, not a single freaking word about alien crash sites. There were rules about landscaping, sure. About exterior decorations, yeah. But there was this one little, tiny, almost forgotten clause about artistic installations. And that, my friends, was my loophole, my golden ticket, my get-out-of-HOA jail-free card. It said something like, year-round artistic installations are permitted, provided they are not deemed to be a nuisance or detrimental to the community's aesthetic. Detrimental to the community's aesthetic. Please, like Karen's idea of aesthetic was anything but freaking beige. The plan, when it came to me, was so simple, so elegant, so utterly bonkers that I almost started laughing. I wasn't going to take down my Halloween decorations. I was going to transform them. I was going to turn my yard into a year-round haunted UFO crash site. Yeah, you heard me right. A UFO crash site. I'm talking a crashed spaceship. Or, you know, something that looks like a crashed spaceship. Alien figures. Government agents in hazmat suits, flashing lights, spooky sounds. The whole freaking shebang. It would be detailed, it would be immersive, it would be completely and utterly over the top. And I'd argue, with a perfectly straight face, that it wasn't a Halloween decoration. It was a year-round artistic installation, a theatrical landscape, a tribute to science fiction. Yeah, that's it. A tribute to science fiction. And therefore completely exempt from the HOA's stupid Halloween rules. I could already picture Karen's face, the sputtering, the rage, the sheer, unadulterated horror. It was gonna be beautiful. This wasn't just about Halloween anymore. It was about freedom. It was about the right to be weird, to be creative, to build a freaking UFO crash site in your front yard if you felt like it. Operation Extraterrestrial Extravaganza was a go, and Whispering Pines Estates was about to get a whole lot weirder. First things first, I needed a UFO, and some aliens, and some government agents, and, well, a whole lot of other crap. I started scouring the internet, looking for prop makers, special effects artists, anyone who could help me bring my insane vision to life. I found him in a guy named, Bob. Seriously, what is it with me and guys named Bob? Bob ran a small company called Props to the Rescue, specializing in props for any occasion. And when I say any occasion, I mean any occasion. This guy had everything from giant inflatable gorillas to realistic-looking dinosaur skeletons to, you guessed it, alien crash site props. So, let me get this straight, Bob said, looking over my very detailed sketches of the proposed UFO crash site. You want a crashed spaceship in your front yard with aliens and government agents, and you want it to be permanent? Well, not permanent, I said. More like year-round, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Think, Area 51 meets Halloween meets my freaking front yard. And, I added with a grin, it has to be HOA-proof. Bob stared at me for a moment. Then he started to laugh. A big, booming laugh that shook his whole body. You're freaking nuts, man, he said, wiping a tear from his eye. I love it, but why? Let's just say, I said, I have a disagreement with my HOA, and this is my way of expressing myself. I told him the whole story. Karen, the Halloween decorations, the tastefulness lecture, the freaking threat to have my stuff removed. Dude, Bob said when I was finished, you are my hero. This is going to be the most epic project I've ever worked on. Consider it done, but it ain't going to be cheap. Cheap isn't what I'm going for, Bob, I said. I'm going for impact. I'm going for shock and awe. I'm going for the most unforgettable, HOO-defying, alien-infested front yard in the history of suburbia. And so, construction, or rather, staging, began. We started with the UFO. Bob had a connection to a guy who built movie props. We got a hold of a slightly damaged replica of a flying saucer about 15 feet in diameter. It wasn't real, of course, but it looked freaking amazing. All metallic and dented and alien-y. We crashed it in my front yard, digging a shallow crater, scattering some debris, mostly scrap metal and broken plastic, and angling the saucer so it looked like it had, well, like it had crashed. Then came the aliens. We got a couple of those life-sized rubber alien figures, the kind you see in cheesy sci-fi movies. We posed them around the crash site, some of them looking dazed and confused, others looking, well, dead. And then the government agents. We got a bunch of mannequins, dressed them up in hazmat suits, and positioned them around the UFO, looking all serious and official. We even added some fake caution tape, and a sign that read, "Warning, Government Research Area, keep out." The whole thing was ridiculous. It was over the top, it was perfect. And the lighting, oh man, the lighting. We installed colored spotlights strategically placed to illuminate the UFO and the aliens. We added flashing lights, strobe lights, and even a freaking fog machine to create a spooky, otherworldly atmosphere. And just for good measure, we hooked up a sound system, playing a loop of eerie sci-fi sound effects, crackling static, weird alien noises, and the occasional muffled government announcement. The neighbors, of course, were losing their freaking minds. They'd gather on the sidewalk, staring at my yard, their jaws hanging open, looking like they'd just witnessed a freaking alien invasion. Which I guess they kinda had. Kids loved it. They'd point and yell, "Look, Mommy, aliens!" Some of the braver ones would even try to sneak into my yard to get a closer look. I had to put up a "Do Not Enter" sign, just in case. My internal monologue was a constant stream of giddy excitement and triumphant pronouncements. "Take that, Karen," I'd mutter to myself, as I adjusted the angle of a spotlight. "Enjoy your tasteful Halloween decorations now." I imagined her face, contorted with rage, her perfectly beige world crumbling around her. It was a beautiful thought. There was, of course, the inevitable HOA inspection. Mr. Snootwell himself showing up with his freaking clipboard and his face. "Mr. O'Malley?" he said, looking at my yard like it was some kind of toxic waste dump. "What is the meaning of this?" "It's an artistic installation, Mr. Snootwell," I said, all calm and innocent. "A theatrical landscape, a tribute to science fiction." But it's Halloween decorations," he sputtered, pointing at the UFO. "You were ordered to tone it down." "These aren't Halloween decorations, sir," I corrected, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "This is a year-round display. It's art. And, as you can see," I added, pulling out a copy of the HOA bylaws, which I now carried with me at all times like a freaking weapon. "There are no rules against artistic installations. As long as they're not, permanent. And this, my friend, is far from permanent." He stared at the bylaws, then at the UFO, then back at me. He knew he was beat. He mumbled something about consulting with the board and retreated, looking like he was about to cry, "Victory!" And as I watched my haunted UFO crash site come to life, man, I felt good. I felt vindicated. I felt like I was finally sticking it to the man, to the HOA, to Karen and her freaking tastefulness. This wasn't just a yard anymore. It was a statement. A symbol of rebellion. A freaking alien crash site in the middle of suburbia. And it was gonna be epic. The grand unveiling of my haunted UFO crash site was, to put it mildly, out of this world. My front yard, once a relatively normal, if Halloween-decorated, suburban landscape, was now a scene straight out of a sci-fi movie. The faux crashed UFO, all dented metal and flickering lights, dominated the scene. The rubber alien figures, sprawled around the wreckage, looked surprisingly convincing, especially in the fog. And the mannequin government agents in their bright yellow hazmat suits added a touch of, well, official absurdity. It was spectacular. It was ridiculous. It was everything I'd hoped for. And Karen? Oh, Karen. She arrived, predictably, like a tightly wound spring ready to boing right out of her sensible shoes. "What?" she shrieked, her voice piercing the previously quiet night air. "Have you done?" I emerged from behind the crashed UFO, wearing a tinfoil hat, because why not, and holding a fake Geiger counter. "Good evening, Karen," I said, my voice calm and even, as if hosting a crashed alien spaceship in your front yard was the most normal thing in the world. "You're admiring my artistic installation, I presume?" "Artistic installation?" she sputtered, pointing a trembling finger at the scene of extraterrestrial chaos. This is insanity. You've turned your yard into a sci-fi nightmare." "It's a theatrical landscape, Karen," I corrected, with a perfectly straight face. "A tribute to the wonders of the universe. And, of course, a subtle commentary on government secrecy and the search for extraterrestrial life. It's educational. You know, for the kids." "Educational?" she repeated, her voice reaching a pitch that probably shattered glass in neighboring houses. "It's terrifying. It's unrealistic." "It's art, Karen," I said with a shrug. "It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be evocative, thought-provoking, and, I might add, perfectly compliant with the HOA bylaws. Remember, no Halloween decorations. This, my dear Karen, is not Halloween. This is something else entirely. It's going to attract weirdos," she declared, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disgust. "It's attracting visitors, Karen," I countered. "People are curious. They're intrigued. They're taking a lot of pictures. I might even start charging admission." I then proceeded to give her a tour, highlighting the various details of the crash site. I showed her the fake scorch marks on the lawn, the scattered pieces of alien debris, the rubber alien bodies, and the mannequin government agents frozen in their poses of, well, whatever it is government agents do when they encounter a crashed UFO. "And over here," I said, gesturing towards a particularly gruesome-looking alien figure, "we have Zorp. He's not doing so well." Karen stared at the scene, her mouth agape, her eyes bulging. She looked like she was about to either faint or have a full-blown panic attack, or maybe both. This is unacceptable," she finally managed to choke out, her voice hoarse. I'll have this thing removed. You'll see, this isn't over, Donovan, this is war." "Bring it on, Karen," I said with a confident grin. "I've got aliens on my side." She turned and stomped off, her sensible shoes clicking angrily on the pavement, leaving me to bask in the glow of my fake, crashed spaceship and the very real satisfaction of having completely and utterly freaked out the HOA's resident killjoy. The emergency HOA meeting, Part 2, the extraterrestrial exasperation, was, if you can believe it, even more insane than the previous ones. Karen, looking like she hadn't slept in days, probably because she'd been too busy having nightmares about little green men, presented her case with the fervor of a woman who'd just discovered an alien invasion in her perfectly manicured neighborhood. The HOA, of course, had already implemented new rules that would prevent anyone else from doing what I had done. This haunted UFO crash site," she declared, her voice shaking with emotion, "is an affront to everything Whispering Pines Estate stands for. It's a safety hazard. It's an eyesore. It's going to traumatize the children. She'd even brought in a psychologist, a guy who looked suspiciously like her son, wearing a lab coat and a pair of glasses that were clearly fake, who testified about the negative psychological effects of exposure to unrealistic alien imagery on young, impressionable minds. Apparently, my UFO was going to turn all the kids in Whispering Pines into, well, I'm not sure what, but it was definitely bad. Then it was my turn. "Miss Karen," I began, addressing the board with a calm, reasonable demeanor that was, of course, completely fake, "seems to be under the impression that I've somehow violated the HOA bylaws. I assure you, at the time, I had not." I presented my defense meticulously and methodically. I cited the previous bylaws, the ones in effect when I'd unleashed my extraterrestrial extravaganza, highlighting the fact that there were no restrictions on year-round artistic installations or theatrical landscapes. I argued that my UFO crash site was not a Halloween decoration, but a permanent, or at least long-term art installation designed to spark imagination and promote scientific inquiry. I even brought in some of the neighborhood kids to testify about how much they loved the UFO. They talked about how cool it was, how realistic it looked, and how they wanted to be astronauts and scientists when they grew up. The other board members were, to put it mildly, divided. Some were clearly still loyal to Karen, but their support was rapidly dwindling. Others looked confused, overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of the situation, and a few I suspected were secretly wanting to build their own UFO crash sites. Then, a man from the back of the room stood up. He was a local science teacher, a resident of Whispering Pines I'd spoken to briefly during the construction. "I have to disagree with Miss Karen," he said, his voice clear and strong. "I think Mr. Donovan's UFO crash site is actually quite educational. It's sparking an interest in science, in space exploration, in the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And frankly," he added with a smile, "it's a lot more fun than another beige house." That was the final nail in Karen's coffin. The board, facing a potential lawsuit, a public relations nightmare, and the undeniable evidence of the crash site's unintentional educational value, voted to do nothing. The meeting ended in chaos, with Karen screaming about the end of civilization as we know it and the rise of the alien overlords, and me, James Donovan, the accidental extraterrestrial enthusiast, walking out with a smug, but well-deserved, I thought, smile on my face. But Karen, like a particularly persistent and alien-phobic cockroach, wasn't about to give up. What followed was a period of escalating absurdity that I can only describe as the UFO wars. Karen, obsessed with getting rid of my haunted UFO crash site, or at the very least making my life miserable, tried every tactic she could think of. She filed complaints with the city claiming it was a zoning violation, a safety hazard, and a public nuisance. The city inspectors came, they inspected, and they found nothing. My crash site was perfectly legal. She tried to organize a neighborhood petition to have it removed. She went door to door, armed with her clipboard and her "think of the property values" speech, trying to convince people that my UFO was a threat to their peaceful, alien-free existence. The petition failed miserably. Most people either politely declined to sign or slammed the door in her face. Some even offered to help me add more aliens to the display. She even, I suspect, attempted some minor acts of sabotage. I found a few, easily removed, "Keep Whispering Pines Earthly" signs stuck in the ground near the UFO. And one morning, I woke up to find one of the alien figures mysteriously covered in glitter. Apparently, she was hoping to make it look less scary, more festive? Her logic was, as always, questionable. Of course, I had security cameras everywhere, capturing her every move. And I, of course, responded in kind. Not with vandalism, oh no. I was above that. I responded with enhancements. I added special effects to the crash site. Flashing lights synced to a soundtrack of eerie sci-fi sound effects. A smoke machine that would periodically emit puffs of harmless fog, creating an even more otherworldly atmosphere. I even installed a fake laser cannon on top of the UFO, just for good measure. I created a backstory for the crash, complete with fictional newspaper clippings, fake government documents, and even a completely made-up eyewitness account from a non-existent neighbor who claimed to have seen the UFO land. I started hosting alien investigation nights for the neighborhood kids. We'd gather around the crash site, armed with flashlights and fake Geiger counters, and search for evidence of extraterrestrial life. We'd analyze soil samples, dirt from my garden, examine alien artifacts, rocks I'd painted silver, and even conduct alien autopsies, using watermelons and gummy worms, of course. And because why not, I started a UFO Watch Club, inviting neighbors to gather in my yard on clear nights and scan the skies for unidentified flying objects. We'd set up telescopes, lawn chairs, and a fully stocked snack bar. It was like a freaking block party, only with more aliens. It was a glorious, ridiculous, utterly over-the-top spectacle. I even started charging a small fee to view. And with each passing day, with each new addition, with each new act of defiance, I could feel Karen's frustration growing, her power waning, her sanity slipping. The haunted UFO crash site had become more than just a yard decoration. It was a symbol of resistance, a testament to the power of creative and slightly unhinged rebellion. And I, James Donovan, the accidental alien ambassador, was winning.